Welcome to Spectral Shadows, where the darkness whispers and the unseen lurks. Tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it? Because horror feels different at night, especially when you're alone. Those who love their mother, like, share, and comment. Subscribe, if you dare. Now turn off the lights, and let's begin. Story number 1. In the world there are thousands of creatures, most of ones you probably know about. But there are some creatures that we do not speak about, things that many think to be better left forgotten. I want to make sure some of these creatures are not forgotten, for if we do not learn from the past, we are doomed to repeat it. The first story I will tell you is from my early work, when I was inexperienced in this field. This was the first time I was allowed to go out into the field alone. It was meant to be a normal circuit around the park. It's not around the entire park, of course. That would take way too damn long. Just a quick 30 miles. These circuits normally take all day, but they are pretty uneventful. Your main objective is to hit the spots that people use as campsites to make sure no one is on the reserve who shouldn't be. People aren't allowed to camp on the reserve for the most part because of the types of wildlife that live here. I was about halfway through my circuit, coming up on another site, when I encountered it for the first time. Because I wasn't experienced, I didn't know what to call it at the time, but I asked one of the older guys at the reserve and was told they're called lap springs. Lap springs look similar to a giant horny frog. They normally get 1 to 1.5 feet tall. The main difference between a lap spring and a normal frog, aside from the size, is, as you could imagine, their behavior. Instead of being in the water for the majority of their lives, they act like tree frogs, crawling up to the tops of trees and using their tongues to catch birds that fly by. They get their name from what they do when they get into the water. The lap spring slides into the water and consumes a truly massive amount of water, to the point where the animal swells to nearly 3 times its normal size. From what the researchers at the reserve have figured out, it does this as a defense mechanism to make predators think it's bigger than it actually is, and it uses the water as a projectile if the predator isn't warded off by the size of the creature. When I came across the lap spring, it was in the process of consuming water at the river that ran next to the campsite. Seeing a giant toad was not what I'd expected on my first day out by myself. I'd encountered some odd creatures up to this point, going out with more experienced rangers, but we'd never come across one of these things. I sat there on the four-wheeler for a good 2 minutes, watching the lap spring suck up water from the river, when I heard a noise that sounded like a high-pitched shriek from a bird. But it sounded louder than any bird I'd ever heard before, and much higher pitched, considering the strange creature I had just seen, the lap spring. I decided that whatever made that noise was something I wanted to be far, far away from. I quickly revved the engine of the four-wheeler and sped off towards the next campsite. The rest of my circuit was pretty uneventful. I saw a few deer resting near a campsite. The four-wheeler scared them off unintentionally. I came across a group of teenagers smoking weed on a campsite closer to the office on the reserve that I had to tell to leave. They, being dumbass teenagers high as fuck, wanted to argue with me that they had permission to be there. But after I told them this area had a large population of predators, including grizzly bears, they decided to leave. I didn't tell them about the much more concerning creatures that hunted the bears, however. When I made it back to the office, I told Gonzalez about what I saw, and he explained what the lap spring was. He wasn't sure what made the shrieking sound, however, because there were a few giant birds that lived in the reserve, and a couple of other creatures that made similar sounds. He didn't elaborate on what those other things were at the time, but I found out a couple of years later. He said, "You should be glad you got out of there as quick as you did. Pretty much everything that makes noises like that is a predator, and even if the noisemaker didn't get you, the lap spring probably would have." I didn't go out on another circuit for another month after that, because I had to fly back home for a funeral. My cousin had passed away in a car crash, and my parents insisted I needed to attend the funeral, even though I'd only met him once and didn't really know the guy. Not saying I didn't care that he died, but I mean, who really wants to take a flight halfway across the country to attend a funeral for someone you didn't know? Anyway, that's off topic, and I think that's about all I have to say today. I've been wanting to tell these stories for a while now, and just discovered this subreddit a couple of weeks ago. Y'all got some crazy stories on here, and I thought mine would fit. But for now, I hope y'all have a wonderful morning, day, or night, and this is to be continued. Story number 2. I don't know how to start this without sounding insane. Maybe I already am. Maybe you'll read this and think I'm just another liar trying to scare strangers online. I get it. I would think that too. But I don't want to scare anyone. I just want it to stop. I want it all to stop. It started 3 weeks ago when my upstairs neighbor died. She wasn't someone I knew well. An old woman, quiet, frail, never left her apartment unless it was Sunday. I only ever heard her when she dragged her metal walker across the floor at night. She always moved at 3:17 a.m. every single night. I remember because I used to check the clock, annoyed, every time I heard her. Then she stopped. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Maybe she moved. Maybe her family took her to a care home. It was a peaceful kind of silence. But then I found a note under my door. It was written in shaky cursive. The paper smelled like dried roses and mildew. All it said was, "You hear her now, don't you?" I stared at it for a long time. No name, no explanation. Just that question. That night, I woke up at exactly 3:17 a.m. The sound came from upstairs, but it was different now. It wasn't a walker anymore. It was something dragging itself. A scraping sound, wet, like something heavy being pulled across the floor. No footsteps, no wheels, just the drag. I didn't sleep after that. I tried to tell the building manager the next day. He looked me straight in the eye and said, "There's no one living upstairs." I told him that wasn't possible, that I had heard her every night for months. He just shook his head. "She passed away 2 weeks before you moved in." No, that wasn't true. I had heard her after I moved in, every night. Unless I tried ignoring it. Earplugs, sleeping pills, nothing helped. At 3:17 a.m., I would always wake up, and the dragging would begin. Louder now, closer to my ceiling. I swear some nights I could hear breathing, wet, rattling, just above my bed. And then came the second note. Why me? It was written in the same shaky hand. But this time, my name was scrawled underneath in ink that looked like it had been smeared by fingers. Nora. I didn't tell anyone about the notes. Who would believe me? I started recording at night, trying to catch the sounds, but every time I played it back, it was just silence. Or worse, static, like something was blocking the sound. I knocked on the ceiling one night, just to see what would happen. I heard it knock back, 3 slow, heavy knocks, and then something whispered from the vents, "Why me?" It didn't sound angry. It sounded sad, like a cry that had been echoing for years, waiting for someone, anyone, to answer. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't speak. I just stood there, frozen, waiting for the whisper to come again. But it didn't. Instead, the lights flickered, the walls groaned, and then my phone vibrated. I don't remember putting my number anywhere. I don't remember setting up notifications for whatever app this was. But there it was. A message on a screen I didn't recognize. You heard her. That means she's yours now. I stopped sleeping after that. I moved my bed into the living room, but it didn't help. The sound followed me. The dragging was closer. Sometimes I'd find wet streaks on the ceiling above me. Sometimes I'd wake up with dirt under my fingernails, my feet muddy like I had been walking outside. But the door was locked, always locked. One morning I woke up and found the mirror in my hallway cracked. In the center of the spiderweb cracks, someone had written in the steam, "Why me?" Only this time, the handwriting wasn't shaky. It was mine. I didn't remember writing it. I didn't remember even standing there. But the toothbrush was still wet in my hand, and my face looked pale. My eyes, my own eyes, looked like they had aged 10 years overnight. I started to realize something. It wasn't just a ghost. It was something else. Something older, sadder, something that needed someone to remember it. And I did, every night. At 3:17, I remembered. I finally called a priest. He refused to enter the apartment. He just stood at the doorway and said, "She's not asking you a question. She's giving you an answer." "An answer to what?" I asked. He looked at me, pity in his eyes. To what they asked her when she died. To what she asked God when no one came to help her. To the silence she heard as she lay on the floor with her walker tipped over. He stepped back. "Now it's your turn." Last night the dragging stopped. I thought maybe it was over. Maybe she moved on. Maybe she found peace. But when I woke up, my hands were wet. My floor was covered in scratches, and my ceiling had new marks. They weren't coming from upstairs anymore. They were coming from below. There was a note waiting for me by the sink this morning. It said, "Why me, Nora?" And below that, written in a different hand, one I don't remember ever using, "Because you heard her." Story number 3. When guests visited our apartment, they always commented on the smell, something old, almost medicinal. We blamed the building's age, and after removing their shoes to come in, they'd eventually stop noticing it. 3 years later, and I still smell it. Reminds me of hospitals from my childhood. My roommate, Paul, had the bigger room because he was here first, and I had responded to an ad online to rent the other. Kitchen, common area where we had the TV and our gaming consoles, dining nook, and a covered patio. Paul and I got along, even though we came from different worlds. He was one that required a lot of posturing with friends and being perpetually online. Mine was maybe lonelier. Somehow we clicked, and after our respective work days, we often found ourselves collaborating on meals and playing games late. I liked RPGs. He preferred co-op shooters, which I joined reluctantly because he got frustrated, yelled, and gave me side-eye whenever I suggested staying calm. He blamed his thick fingers. From our apartment, you could look down at a parking lot where every Tuesday garbage trucks made their rounds at 7 a.m. to the chagrin of tenants whose bedrooms faced that way, like mine. I feel like these are important details. I'm describing my life as it has been for a while. It's where I live, and it's where I am now. It's the mundane little facts that I need to tell you, so that they serve as counterweights to the hefty truth I'm about to unload. In search of sober advice, I just need to tell it so that you can understand. You won't understand, but I've got to at least try. "Ollie, check it out," I remember Paul said. I slurped some Cheerios messily and looked up from my phone. "What up?" I said. "Those look new." I lazily pulled myself up and looked out the window. "Huh? What? Where?" "Those shoes. I'm gonna go get them." Paul rushed out and soon emerged in the parking lot. I watched him step gingerly in his moccasins to the dumpster and scoop up the pair of bright white sneakers, grinning up at me as he scurried back. The door slammed. I pressed into my lower back to stretch as Paul came in. He proudly displayed the pair of shoes in one hand and snapped with the other. "Tight." "They don't stink," I said. The shoes were completely white, and despite sitting by a dumpster, were impeccably clean. "Smell like roses, these," he said. "Well, will they fit?" "Size 11, baby," he confirmed. "Nice coincidence. Now we've come to the part of the story I can't really expect you to believe. I wouldn't. In my family, we've seen tragedy. My younger brother was born with a disease that meant lots of operations before he could even walk. Hospitals became second homes. Iodine soap, a familiar salve, plastic-wrapped food, and peel-back tin-capped juice in those milky plastic containers, a family meal. I accompanied my parents every time they went, and each time was like sucking the color out of dreams, the whimsy out of imagination. I didn't grow up all at once, but my childhood was not child-friendly. I learned that life was limited, solutions pragmatic, and usually muted and smelly. "Let me try 'em on," said Paul. He sat on the couch, pulled off his moccasins, put on the right shoe, then the left, and disappeared. As soon as he put those shoes on, he was gone. Gone is not in any sense that is common. I mean, gone without any real-world indication that he was there before. Gone without any vision, nor any sound that would signal his disappearance. He was there, then he wasn't, as if his existence simply ceased. I watched the couch cushion slowly reform itself where Paul had been sitting. I was still standing, but I had moved back up against the wall, and my palms were pressed against it, as if expecting the room to suddenly fall away, or for gravity's pull to shift 90 degrees. What felt like eternity was only a minute, and then Paul was back, sitting on the couch, panting, one of the new shoes in his hand. He looked around like a stranger before finding my eyes and locking on, making me feel like prey. "Fuck," I yelled. "Fuck," he whispered. He slowly regained control of his breathing and then yelled, wide-eyed at me. "Fuck, Ollie." "What?" I screamed back, shaking. "What?" Blood rushed back into his face as his complexion softened and his eyes narrowed. "Bro," he said, "you won't believe it." I didn't believe it. He told me that he was in a forest. He said it was hot and humid, and the noises of insects, birds, and dripping rain were as vivid as anything here. He struggled to recall things at first because of the shock, but as we calmed down, he told me he had truly been there in the rainforest, standing on moist black dirt and looking up at sunlight piercing the canopy. He said it smelled exquisite, a word that was out of character for him. "You're saying you were in the Amazon?" I said finally. "No idea, bro," he said. "Amazon, maybe. I don't know. Maybe Borneo. I don't know, the rainforest, man. The dead-ass rainforest." "All right," I said. By now he had taken off the other show, and the pair was just sitting there in front of us on the rug. Paul eyed me, looked at the shoes. "Yup," he said. "You gotta." "The hell I do," I countered. "You gotta." Grimaced, reading my face, I guess. "You wanna, Ollie? You wanna trust me?" I did. I felt calm enough to know that I did. I had to try this. They'd fit my size 10 feet. I bent down and grabbed one, slipped it on my socked foot, grabbed the other and held there, staring at Paul. "What should I... you know," I prompted. "Fuck right, dude. Listen, just take the shoe off. It's what I did. And pow, I'm back. Just take off the shoes." This was our exchange before I put the other shoe on, and the apartment was immediately gone. No cues, no noise or visual of transition, just there, and now, here. Where was I? It wasn't a forest like Paul. It was a field. I felt the sun on my skin, hills in the distance and a highway, a semi-truck rumbling past, buildings in the distance, bent down and tore off a shoe, and was suddenly back in the apartment, facing a roommate whose body language bounced with intrigue. "Dude," he yelled, "you just vanished." "My God," I said. "Jesus Christ." He was nodding with his whole head and neck, as if vibing, wide-eyed, unblinking. Sick, right? The rainforest? Not a forest, I said. More like a prairie, I guess. But there was a road, a big truck. Buildings, too. No shit. I'd have checked out those buildings. He said a bit curtly. "Yeah, but I came back before I could really get my bearings. It was crazy." "Crazy," he repeated. "Crazy." We both looked at the shoe I held. "So, this is the secret. Magical shoes that transported us. Not unheard of in fiction, but I am telling you that this happened to us. Paul went to a forest. I went to a prairie. We found a pair of shoes in the trash and put them ON, and were teleported to these destinations. Instantaneously. It didn't stop there. It couldn't. Would you have stopped?" Paul went again. When he came back, he told me he was on a hill overlooking a valley and could see a whole city that he didn't recognize. I went again and found myself on a gray sand beach with a cold wind. We went a few more times like this. Once I found myself on a snowy mountain, and when I reappeared in our apartment, Paul said I was cold to the touch. There was even snow in my hair. Then Paul went again, and the asshole was gone for 5 whole minutes. When he returned, I was surprised to see him cradling about 10 mangoes. "What the hell?" I said. "A mango orchard, man. A bleeping orchard. For real. Are they ripe?" We took a break from teleportation over slices of fresh mango. We discussed our experience and decided that the destinations were random. We knew it didn't matter if we walked around, that we always returned to the apartment. We knew there were cities, so we knew there were people. It was clearly Earth, so whatever magic this was, it was here. But when was it? Had either of us seen anything out of whack for 2025? No, we hadn't. Still no people. "Maybe we should stop," I remember saying. "Give it a rest, maybe." Neither of us wanted to do that. We had the whole day still. We took turns teleporting, and we learned more. We started to figure that eventually we should land in cities. A few times we each landed within sight of populations, but since we had agreed to a 1-minute limit after Paul's 5-minute disappearance, we couldn't yet reach those places. Paul begrudged the rule. We also figured that if we hadn't landed in towns or cities yet, it was only because most of the globe is still just wild land, farms, or water. Bad timing to jinx ourselves like that. I pulled on the second shoe and at once lost my senses. Not that I couldn't feel, because the shock of cold was devastating and I gasped. Not that I couldn't taste, because when I gasped, I lost my breath as my mouth filled with icy salt water. Not that I couldn't see, but it was black night and then plunging darkness. Not that I couldn't hear, but it was shrieking wind and then warbled frigid water in ghostly depths that seemed to tear me in different directions. I struggled, panic-filled. Reach, but swim, I thought. Must breathe, I knew. But I could escape this. I reached, and just as my lungs began to inhale, my frozen knuckles locked their fingers around a shoe and tugged it off. Suddenly I was in the apartment on all fours, heaving and vomiting salt water over our rug. Shivering miserably, drenched completely. I felt Paul hitting my back. My ears were ringing, adjusting to the sudden warmth. Paul brought water, patted my back. I said. My voice sounded like gravel. I was in the ocean, I think. Paul just stared, nodded. He was amazed, and still I sensed jealous. Later I sat in my robe, wrapped in towels before a humming space heater. I told him about the storm, the night. We had already experienced nighttime in the couple hours we had been at this adventure. I told him about the crashing waves that I couldn't escape. "We have to be more careful," I said. That had been enough for one day. We agreed the shoes would stay in the living room, that we would only use them together. We spent the rest of the evening talking about it, unbelieving but convinced. We planned. From now on, we had an entry position. We'd sit in cannonball position, but one leg crossing the other. Both hands would grasp the second shoe as we put it on, so that we'd already be prepared to yank it off in case of trouble. We considered other things like wearing a wetsuit and flippers, goggles, even an oxygen tank, given how likely it should be that we'd land in an ocean somewhere. But ultimately we decided to buy a large plastic sheet from Home Depot and lay it out on the living room floor to catch water, and to purchase a simple life jacket that wouldn't hinder movement when teleporting plopped us on dry land. I barely slept that night. As frightening as they were, These shoes changed my life. I was jittery with excitement, suppressing fear. We both called in sick next morning. Of course we did. Then we got into Paul's car and went on our errands. Only took an hour. Back at the apartment, we laid our new plastic sheet where the rug had been. Rug was hung to dry out on the patio. The life jacket was a small sea kayaker's jacket, stylish and minimal. We had also bought a small knife, some beef jerky, a headlamp, a length of high-strength static line, and bug spray. The jacket had pockets for these things. We also decided to pack my phone in the jacket. It had a better waterproof rating than Paul's, and my international roaming plan was less ghastly expensive than his. If we ever landed somewhere with signal, we wanted to take photos and videos, but mostly it was to set the timer, as we'd agreed to increase the time to 5 minutes. Later we'd increase it to 10 minutes. We shared a large breakfast of hash browns, egg sausage sandwiches, and dark coffee. Then the adventure began. As the morning progressed, an area of our living room began to look like a naturopath's collection. On each trip, we'd bring something back. A rock, a branch, a flower or bundle of grass, dirt, or sometimes trash. It was shocking how rarely we landed close to people, yet how often we found trash. It became clear that we were hitting places all over the world. Wrappers with Chinese lettering, a grocery bag with Tamil. The phone translation app said French, other languages we'd yet to identify. On one trip, Paul was gone over 5 minutes. I began to worry. His phone rang, and I picked it up. Ollie, it read. I accepted. Paul, I said haltingly. Brew, I heard him yell. It was a perfectly clear call. Paul, I exclaimed. I stood and paced. Paul, where are you? I'm not sure, but I got bars, bro, so I'm calling. Any landmark? What's the climate? Pretty dry. I think I'm in a desert, but there are power lines, I see. I guess a cell tower's close, so... My hand was in my hair, as if calming my mind. Clear skies, he said. Maybe you're stateside somewhere. Southwest? Take a photo. We can reverse image search back here again. Or wait, just open the map app. I downloaded a ton of regions last night. Hold on. I waited a few seconds. No dice, no internet, just calling. GPS shows I'm nowhere, he said. Damn. Yeah. Hey, Ollie. What's up? Just then he appeared, almost exactly where I was pacing, and I bumped into him, knocking us both to the plastic-covered ground. We laughed maniacally. When we calmed, he showed me some photos he'd taken. GeoGuessr, eat your heart out, I said. Huh? You know that Google Maps Street View game? It shows you a street view somewhere on the planet, and you guess where it is by dropping a pin on a map. Whoever's closest wins. I played with colleagues a few times. That's an idea, said Paul. We created a map, named it Jumping Jimmy's. Then we did a reverse image search on one of the pictures that Paul had taken with my phone. While it wasn't conclusive, it gave us some look-alikes. Could be that one. Red sand in Saudi. I said. But look at that rock. A bit too unique. You would have seen that. This one? Devil's Desert? Not sandy enough. Namibia? No. Wait, that one, Paul exclaimed. What's that? Oh yeah, that looks good. Says Atacama, Chile. Yes, that's it, I'm sure of it. Mark it. We chose a series of icons that we labeled by the percentage of how sure we were of each location. Tossed at 90% on the Atacama Desert. Green circle. Elation welled up in my heart. I had always loved to travel, and now I was traveling the world incognito. Paul and I were prepared, ready, and eager. We thought we anticipated everything, if only we'd kept our guard up. By evening, many colorful icons dotted our map. We had taken dozens of photos. One of Paul's toothy smile beside a grinning shepherd on a mountain road somewhere in Kyrgyzstan. Another of a group of people at a bus stop in a Colombian town. Paul envied how often I landed with people. "Yeah, you always get the good places," Paul said. "I just get trees and hills every single time." Puddles pooled on the plastic tarp in our living room from a handful of times we found ourselves swimming. Paul wanted to visit a city, but I wasn't ready to increase our time limit enough to walk to one or to board a bus like in Colombia. We had to take it slowly, and I knew that if Paul would be patient, we'd land in one. But then it finally happened. Tokyo is the largest city on Earth, with a population over 30 million. Fitting, then, that it was the first big city we happened upon, or that I happened upon. I had learned to rein in my expectations when slipping on the second shoe. In less than an instant, I was teleported onto a narrow road, remarkably carless and calm, staring up at skyscrapers glinting in sunlight. I recognized Japanese on the shopfront, and English accompanying all the street signs. In fact, I'd been to Tokyo before, and so the sight was familiar. The sight of me, however, less so, at least to a curious couple ogling me. I realized a foreigner in the middle of a Tokyo street, wearing a life jacket packed with survival items, and awkwardly sat. Hugging his knees and grabbing a shoe would look bizarre. Scampered to my feet and out of the way of a stout little delivery van driving past. I smiled at the couple who continued walking. I retrieved my cell phone. 09 minutes, 04 seconds left before I should remove a shoe. Something immediately caught my attention. The sweet scent of tempura frying. I located its source, a small restaurant with ubiquitous Norin fabric hanging to mark its entryway. I was in Tokyo. I loved Japanese food. Loved it, absolutely. Here I was. I had to, right? We couldn't control where we landed, so who knows when I'd happen upon Japan and Tokyo itself again. I found my hands searching my chest as I realized I had no money. We should have been traveling with credit cards, at least, but they pay with cash here, mostly. Impractical to travel with every currency, though, and impractical to expect a currency exchange. Then it dawned on me, to my shame and to my joy, that I could dine and dash without so much as a step to flee parted, the Norin to enter. Konnichiwa, hello. I sat at the bar in the narrow locale, removing my life jacket ashamedly and hanging it on a hook underneath. I ordered the tendon by pointing. The aroma, the delectable crispy vegetables and shrimp, beautifully crisp and umami flavors. As if waking from a dream, I remembered Paul and quickly checked the time. I was already 10 minutes overdue. With averted eyes and utter embarrassment and shame for what they'd think, I snatched my life jacket and ducked under the bar. Removed a shoe. "Son of a bitch!" yelled Paul. "Where the fuck were you?" I was freaking out, man. We said 10 minutes. He sniffed. "What's that smell?" I begged his forgiveness and placed my hands on his shoulders, urging him onto the couch. "Calm, calm. It's toasted sesame," I said. "I was in Tokyo. I ate tempura. Tempura, that fried stuff they serve with sushi. Sure, yeah. Did you say Tokyo? A city? You ate in a city? He yelled, smiling. Damn right, I said. Jumpin' Jimmies, he yelled. And I repeated that refrain reflexively. Mark it down. A city, you lucky bastard. Loki smells insane. You lucky, lucky asshole. And you didn't bring any back. Damn it, I said. I'm sorry, Paul. I didn't think about it. When I saw the time, yeah, all good. Man, I want to land in a city. Paul's eyes were on the life jacket, but not really. They were distant, imaginative. I couldn't tell if he was more happy or more envious. Long stares are tough to decipher. You'll get there, man. I promise. We'll get you there. For a moment, annoyance crossed his expression, but it didn't linger long enough for comment. Yeah, he said plainly. We jumped a few more times, and then Paul said he wanted to take a break. Envious, it turned out. He was sulking, disappeared, into his room without too many words between us. I figured he'd just have to let it settle, and we'd be back at it in the evening. I fixed myself a sandwich and ate it while observing our disorderly living room. Souvenirs, laptops, wet plastic. Then I retired to my own room, surprised to feel tired. I think the jumps take it out of you. I sank into willful sleep. When next I woke, it was dark outside. I'd slept the whole afternoon. Clock read 9 p.m. Out, in the living room, everything looked the same. Paul's door was shut. My mouth felt dry, and so I poured a glass of water and leaned on the counter, marveling at our mess again. Then I saw the shoes were gone. I set the glass down and skipped to Paul's door, knocked. Paul, you awake? I opened it. Paul, not there. As I rushed back into the living room and started upending cushions in search of the shoes, it was like watching an actor in a movie you've already seen. I knew he'd taken them. I knew he jumped. The life jacket was on the floor. I retrieved my phone from a pouch. Idiot, I thought. You left it. No missed calls, no texts. I called Paul's phone and heard it ringing in his room. Idiot, I said to myself more sharply. How long had he been gone? I looked for any new artifacts, any notes or new pins on our Google map. Nothing. I checked the tarp, which was mostly dry now. His car was still parked outside. I opened our front door and stuck my head out. Hallway was clear. This son of a bitch straight up donned the shoes and pieced, I said aloud. In anger, I sounded more like Paul than myself. Oppressive silence seemed to coalesce. It was a bit more humid than normal. All the extra salt water. Suddenly, our pile of artifacts and souvenirs seemed nasty, so I grabbed a garbage bag and shoved everything in, tied it off. I was helpless. Hours went by. It was 3 a.m. by the time I felt tired again. My eyes stung. I drank some water and retreated to my bed, where I finally let myself pass out. Beep, beep, beep. Groggy and petrified, I calmed myself when I realized I was just waking up. The garbage truck upturned the dumpster, its metal arms clanging as it guzzled trash, and then replaced the container, drove off. I fell out of bed. 7 a.m. out in the living room, the scene was unchanged. No Paul. He had been gone for so many hours. I cooked runny oatmeal, added raisins, and slurped it. Could he have drowned? Didn't take the life jacket. The buffoon. Real. Possibility. Maybe he landed in Vegas and would pop back home to regale me with some story worthy of The Hangover. Wild animal could have attacked him, but I struggled to imagine he wouldn't have the time to remove a shoe. Maybe he's just on a hike. I knew I shouldn't have eaten that tempura. I like Paul, but I knew he was quick to jealousy. Why didn't I smooth things over? It would have taken 5 minutes max. Paul's ego wanted, needed to be coaxed. 2 days and already we're at each other's throats. No, that can't be it. A misunderstanding, maybe. He's just off to prove a point. Don't fuck with the rules, Ollie, he'll tell me. Tell yourself, man, leaving precautions behind. No phone, even. God damn it. I was chewing on a raisin, the wet oatmeal juice resting in my mouth, awaiting to be swallowed. I was staring at the plastic sheet on our living room floor. One moment, that's all I was doing. The next, I was staring at a body. Face down, shirtless, holes in his back, blood pooling, some dripping down the torso, white shorts, pockets outturned, stained. One white shoe, stained. The other foot is bare and dirty. Thick fingers, bent and broken on one hand. The way jumping works, it makes it seem that this body had been there for as long as I had been looking at that spot, that I'd been staring at it while I slurped cooling oatmeal, that I should feel guilty for only plunging into a nightmare after the body appeared, and not before. Paul's body, his hair, his broken hands, the smell. My mind recalled images of hospitals and gowns with geometric prints, hands scrubbing, harsh brown bars of soap with foam that smelled medicinal and metallic and burnt. The smell of memory competed with the smell of death, one trying to sanitize the other because it cannot be. It can't. He can't be dead. Oatmeal dribbled down my chin before I could close my mouth. It suddenly tasted like raw meat, and I spat into the sink. I became aware of my pounding heart playing catch-up. All my senses were delayed, as if reality could not so abruptly be changed, so noiselessly debased to this horror. Each sniff triggered a gag. Each blink felt eternal. Give it enough time to just erase this. Blink it out of existence. I know it can be done. Please, please, please. I'm telling you this, but not under my real name. I'm not Ollie, and he's not Paul. I need help. There's a body, shot to death, lying on a plastic tarp in my living room. One shoe is still on, the other, it's gone. Nobody's going to believe me. What am I supposed to do? Story number 4. For years, the students at our high school called Mr. Fuller Bucket Man. We did so because everywhere he went, he carried a 5-gallon paint bucket. No one knew why he hoisted it around or what was in there. We just knew his favorite form of punishment was to bring students into his office and force their hands into the gallon drum. Today, it was my turn, all because I had been 30 minutes late for gym class. "Do you know why you're in here?" Mr. Fuller asked. "Yes." He slid the bucket in front of me and tapped the lid. "Mr. Fuller, I understand what I did. I'll never be late again. Open it, Bobby, or I swear you'll never leave this room." The muscles in my body tensed. Mr. Fuller was 6'3", built like a semi, and had all the credentials of a well-respected member of society. I didn't have much physical or relational capital to resist his demands. Come on, I thought. What's the worst it could be? Just take the lid off and stick your hand in. I secured my fingers around the lid, then pulled. Damn, it's on tight. Is that the best you can do? Mr. Fuller shoved me aside, gripped the lid with both hands, and pop! Ripped it off. Like it was nothing. By now my fingertips were creased from the pulling. My clothes were drenched in sweat. Put your hand in. I shuffled to the bucket's edge, my feet as heavy as cement blocks. When I peered inside, my eyes went wide with horror. The thing before me resembled a mass of pulsing yellow flesh. Its single bloodshot eye rolled around its body like a billiard ball. Slimy tentacles smacked against the sides of the tub, trying to get out. What is it, Mr. Fuller? Your punishment. He grabbed my wrist and shoved it into the goopy flesh. I tried to resist, but his strong grip held me in place. It hurts. A burning sensation started in my fingers, then moved up my arm. It's pulling me in. Mr. Fuller yanked me free, shoved me in my seat, and snapped the lid back onto the bucket. By now, the skin on my arm was hot pink, like a first-degree burn. It hurt so bad I could barely breathe. Have you learned your lesson, Bobby? Yes. Someday, this creature will return to you and continue your training. My training? Mr. Fuller pointed to the door and said without emotion, "You can go now." I never found out what was in Mr. Fuller's bucket. He died several weeks after our encounter, in a car accident, and his creature, it was gone, too. Years passed, and I relocated across the country for university. I was eager to start my new life. But then, several weeks into my first semester, I saw something. As I stepped out into the student quad area after my last class, I spotted an odd shape squirming in the grass. It was the yellow blob. Its single eye was focused on me. Its maw of needle-like teeth widened hungrily. I remembered Mr. Fuller's words. Someday, this creature will return to you and continue your training. Before I could do or say anything, it slid into a nearby storm drain and was gone. Story number 5. This is a bit of a long story, but that's the thing about going crazy. It doesn't happen all at once. It's a slow boil until the pot rattles itself off the stove. I'm putting every detail here because the details are what made people roll their eyes. The details are what made me doubt myself. And the details are what eventually pushed me to start acting like a stalker, just to prove I had one. I live alone in a one-bedroom on the 6th floor of a narrow brick-and-glass building that pretends it's boutique by way of a chalkboard in the lobby that says, "Welcome home" in cursive. My view is the back alley, a sliver of sky, a row of dumpsters, and the backs of cafes where staff stand in the doorways blowing steam off their hands in winter. In summer, there's the smell of hot metal and overripe fruit from the produce store. The alley hums differently every season. I know that now, what the humming should sound like when no one else is there. I keep odd hours because I do copy editing and manuscript formatting for a small press that thinks deadlines mean last minute or not at all. So I send a lot of emails at 2 a.m. and nap in chopped-up blocks. Nights aren't scary when you live at your own pace. Nights make sense. Nights are consistent. In June, nights stopped being consistent. It was small at first. My front door latch. If I let the door swing shut, it doesn't click unless I turn the knob and push it into the frame. For the first 2 years, I learned the muscle memory. Then suddenly, I'd come home from the elevator, and the door would be, even with the jam, silent. You think you forgot. You make a note. I started a list in the Notes app called Am I Losing It? It was half a joke. I wrote 1, 6, 12, door shut quiet. 2, 6 to 13, coffee mug moved. I leave it slightly skewed on the drying mat. It was parallel to the edge. 3, 6 to 15, faint cigarette smell in hallway at 11 p.m. No one on my floor smokes. I know because the property manager wasted an entire tenants' meeting threatening to fine people. 4, 6 to 17, coin on the bookshelf slid. I keep a toonie on the corner of a shelf like a paperweight. It helps me remember where I set down the envelope with rent receipts. Don't ask me why the coin matters. It mattered to me. I told myself I was making content out of nothing. I told myself my brain likes patterns and anxiety will feed it. Kara, best friend, told me the same thing over wine. You work alone. Your sense of time is fuzzy. It's an off week. Leave your apartment messy on purpose. See if anything actually changes. So I started leaving tells. A hair taped across my bathroom drawer. A thread balanced on my bookshelf coin. A Q-tip was wedged between my sliding balcony door and the rail. Not paranoid, just curious. Like a kid setting flour on the floor and waiting for Santa's boot prints. On 6 to 21, the hair across the drawer was cut cleanly in the middle, and both ends were still trapped under the tape. A pair of cuticle scissors was lying by my soap dispenser. Stared at it for a long time. The scissors were mine. I hadn't used them. I called Kara. She said I'd probably snagged it myself and didn't remember. She said, "Hey, we used to tape hair across our dorm mini-fridge, and it always fell off because of humidity." She said, "You're scaring yourself." I bought a doorbell camera. My camera lasted one night before a stern-looking security guard knocked and asked me to remove it. Dark hair, dark eyes, early 30s, knuckles like he'd worked with his hands before sitting in a lobby. He introduced himself as Aiden and said the rule wasn't his. He just had to enforce it. If you want to point something inside, go for it, he added, lowering his voice like he was doing me a favor. Just not into the hall. The management company sent a mass email within 24 hours of that night, reminding tenants that cameras were not allowed on the hallway side of unit doors. For privacy reasons, they claimed. So I did what Aiden said and set the camera inside, angled at the door. That was the night the camera battery died at 3:12 a.m., despite showing 86% at midnight. I woke to the colorless smear of dawn and a low battery chime. No footage. The door was shut quietly. I started sleeping with the TV on, not because I thought the sound would deter anyone, but because the static blue wash on the wall would wake me if a shadow moved. The truth is, I started sleeping like prey, shallow, with a rope of dread twisted under my ribs. You can't live that way and be a person during the day. During the day, you forget your own passwords and leave a burner on. During the day, you pour milk into the sink and realize you were aiming for your coffee. On 6/26, I found a folded paper napkin under my doormat. When I came in from a run, it was the cheap brown kind from the cafe downstairs. Inside, someone had printed in narrow, careful block letters, "You forgot the green onions again." It was true. I'd spent the last few days reminding myself that I needed to stop at the grocery store and pick some up. My brain told me to not make this about me. It's a joke. Someone is teasing their roommate, not for me. But it also reminded me that it was my doormat the note had been left under. I took a picture and added it to my list before taking a shower. I made a quick run after lunch to pick up some groceries and tried to put it again out of my mind. The next morning, there was a note inside my apartment. A yellow sticky note on my kitchen counter. I swear I hadn't put there. Same handwriting. Block letters that tried to look friendly by putting hearts in the middle of the O's, which did the opposite. Onion green is not green onioni, called the non-emergency line. The operator's voice was soft with fatigue. "Has there been a break-in?" I told her the latch thing, the hair, the napkin, the sticky note. "Ma'am, we can send a patrol to check the building, but unless there's damage or an intruder, there's not much we can do." "Have you notified your property manager?" "Yes. And he said, make sure you're locking the door." A patrol came, took one look around, and told me to get a better lock. The locks are drilled into a steel frame set by the building. The super isn't authorized to change the hardware. The company has a master key. It's a security issue if every tenant has their own, the super explained, eyes sliding off mine. His name is Gerard, but everyone calls him Jerry. He's the kind of man who calls women kiddo, past 50, and thinks it's charming, but he seemed harmless to me. The sticky notes multiplied. They were never threatening, not in a way that would trigger anyone else's alarm but mine. They were corrections. They were comments. They were edits. "Your splats of olive oil on the stove are greasy. Run the heat a little lower. A few more minutes and your coffee won't be sour. Your shoes will last longer if you don't kick them off by the heel. And once you look good in red. Go back for the sweater. I had tried on a sweater at a consignment. Shop on Dundas and put it back, because I'm not actually a red person." I started scanning faces everywhere. In line at the cafe, on the streetcar, in the reflection of the subway window. The security guard from the camera day, Aiden, smiled. When I came in and asked if everything was okay, he had the practiced gentleness of people who get yelled at professionally. I said I thought someone might have a copy of my key. "You'd be surprised how often that happens," he said. "Contractors, old supers, roommates. You can get your own deadbolt installed high up. They usually allow that." He glanced up, measuring my height. "You might need a stool to reach it, though. I'm 5'2" on a good day." I laughed too quickly. "I'm not paranoid," I told him. "It's probably nothing." "Probably," he said. "But paranoia is just a safety feature, like a seatbelt. It's dumb right up until it's not. Every story has a moment where you could pull the fuse out before the fire gets to it. Here's mine. I started following people. Not like a pro, not like the movies. I'd see a man whose hair was the same, the almost black as Aiden, but with a different jawline. And I'd keep going after my coffee. And then, without making a choice, I'd turn when he turned. If his bag had a frayed strap, I'd fixate on it and decide the fray was a clue. If he held the door for a woman and looked after her a beat too long, I'd decide that beat was intent. If he got off at my stop and stayed for 3 blocks in front of me, I'd slow down so he could pass me. Then I'd fall in. I took pictures of shoes, backpacks, and the backs of heads. I put them in a folder called Crowns, because from behind, people are mostly scalpy, and the idea made it less creepy. On 7 to 3, I saw my handwriting on a sticky note in the corner of my bathroom mirror. It looked like a mirror's version of me. Familiar and wrong. It said, "Anyone would think you're crying in here. The handwriting wasn't mine. It was pretending to be." The O's had those tiny hearts, like a tell. It's grotesque what your brain does with a detail like that. For the rest of the night, every O I typed looked like an open mouth. Kara came over and did a full sweep, like we were in a procedural drama. She checked the air vents. She looked for pinholes in the walls. "You're giving someone the show they want," she said finally, trying to sound gentle and landing somewhere resentful. "If there's anyone at all, you've lost weight, Soph." "I'm eating," I said. I wasn't. I was gnawing. There's a difference. "You're sleeping." "Yes," I lied. She looked at my couch. The pillow had a sweat shadow in the shape of a skull. "Let me stay." "I don't want you to think I'm crazy," I blurted, and then laughed, and then cried in the bathroom with the faucet running so Kara wouldn't hear the shape of it. The next night, we set the trap like we were 12. A glass of water balanced precariously atop the door, hair across the drawer, tape on the deadbolt, salt sprinkled on the kitchen floor to dust for footprints, like detectives who couldn't be bothered to buy powder. We huddled in my room with the lights off, whispering until whispering turned into jerky laughter. At 2:44 a.m., the front door clicked, a careful click. Not the crash of our paranoia rewarded, just a careful click, like 30 other nights. The water didn't fall. The deadbolt tape was intact. The salt looked smooth. At 2:48 a.m., the bathroom fan turned on by itself. It's motion sensing. Sometimes it's finicky. Kara whispered, "Maybe your pipes are haunted." We lay there and watched the ceiling. Every distant door slam in the building. Every elevator shudders. Every dawn bird that mistook the city's light. For the sun started early. Kara fell asleep, snoring lightly at 3:10. I lay awake until 5 before exhaustion took me to sleep. The sticky note the next morning said, "Love the sleepover, brings me back." I took it to the building office. Jerry said, "Kids have too much access to prank supplies. We never had this problem with real tape. I want the locks changed. We can do that when there's a turnover. I want them changed now. We don't authorize one-off changes," he said. "And anyway, if someone's being a creep, changing the lock won't stop notes under the door." It was on my counter. He shrugged. He looked 47 and bored in unpressable pants. "Maybe your friend thought it was funny. The thing about losing your mind is that the world starts treating you like you already did. That's the practical harm. The existential harm is that you start treating yourself the same way. You start leaving yourself little bribes. If I'm good for a whole hour, I can look through the peephole. If I finish this chapter, I can check the deadbolt tape. You bargain with your fear like it's a toddler." On 7/8, I followed a man into the grocery store on College because his shoes looked familiar. Dark sneakers, white soles, a notch in the leather near the right big toe. I pretended to examine green onions. He stood close enough to reach past me for cilantro. I could smell his gum, mint sharp, almost medicinal. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the price. That's not a thing I ever noticed before this. How hard some men look at prices. He took his cilantro and went. I watched the shape of his shoulders under his jacket and thought of photographs where something terrible has already happened, but all anyone can see is light. He turned right on Beatrice. I turned right on Beatrice. He cut across to the next block, and I followed from the other side of the street. Then he stopped at a laundromat and bent to tie his shoe. He wasn't looking at me. I could have walked past. Instead, I stopped too, 10 paces back, and pretended to check my phone. He looked up. We made eye contact that felt like a knife in the air between us. He frowned. He said, politely but confused, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Sorry," and fled. I went home and triple-checked the balcony Q-tip. It was missing. The door was still latched from the inside. That same day, a maintenance notice went up in the lobby. Annual fire alarm inspection, July 12th to July 14th. Entry to units between 9 a.m. Entry to units between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. with notice. I circled the date on my paper calendar. I told myself this was normal, necessary. I told myself this was good. People with clipboards who aren't allowed to be creepy. I told myself 100 things. It was like trying to nail fog to the wall. On 7 to 12, a man with a plastic visitor's badge and a can of air stepped into my apartment for 15-20 minutes, tops, to test the ceiling sensors. He had 4 arms, like he lifted actual ladders, not the lightweight aluminum ones the company uses. He kept his baseball cap on, low. He said he needed to check the smoke detector in the bedroom, too. When I said I'd follow him, he shrugged like, "Sure, whatever." He took the smoke detector off its base with a twist and checked something I couldn't see. Then he put it back with a harder twist, like a lid. He smelled like spearmint gum and faint cigarette smoke. When he left, I took the detector down myself. I stood on the stool Aiden had teased me about needing, and reached up with both hands and tried to curry the plastic loose with my fingernail. I took the whole round plate off. There was nothing but the white belly of a standard unit and a printed date of manufacture. I felt stupid and paranoid. I wanted to cry. I put it back, and it didn't quite click. I had to wiggle it until it sat flush again. For the rest of the afternoon, it blinked red every 40 seconds, like a little heart too slow to save anyone. That night, the sticky note said, "You're right. Red isn't you. I don't have space here for every small way I came apart." It wasn't dramatic. It was a fine thread unspooling over 2 weeks while the world went on being its crisp self. Buses huffed and sighed. Pigeons bickered. A kid on my floor wore a dinosaur jacket with felt spikes and refused to go anywhere unless he could press his own elevator button. I kept working. I kept showering. Sometimes I could feel the exact place an unfamiliar eye would stand if it could watch me. In the doorway, slightly to the right, where you can see the mirror without being in it. I kept grocery shopping badly, as demonstrated by the notes. I kept checking my tape on the deadbolt and finding it torn, and I kept telling myself it must be my own hands. I kept sleeping with the TV on, but woke anyway. Bone stiff from shivering in fights I mostly lost. On 7/16, I snapped. I mean that, in the most boring sense. Something inside me just didn't stretch anymore. I told my boss I needed a week. I packed a bag without my toothbrush because I had an irrational thought about someone touching the bristles. I booked a $102 room in a budget hotel near the Gardener because I figured if you're going to be watched where there are security cameras every 10 feet and men in suits practicing their neutral faces for meetings. I told no one where I was going. Not Kara, not my parents, not the please text when you get home. Group chat, comprised of 3 people who all live in different time zones and therefore know how to say love you without punctuation. I felt guilty about that. Then I felt guilty about feeling guilty. Then I drank 2 tiny hotel vodkas and fell asleep in sheets that smelled like industrial citrus. At 2:03 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown. If you're going to hide, you should book a place with better curtains. I lay there with the phone lighting the bottom half of my face and actually argued with myself about whether to turn on the bedside lamp. Turning it on would make me a silhouette. Not turning it on made me a target for whatever was already in the dark. People always say that in stories. It sounds ridiculous, but it's true in your body. The dark is a physical thing sitting on your chest. I texted back before I could stop myself. Who is this? The 3 dots came up immediately. Then, unknown. You don't lock your balcony door. Not well. I was on the 12th floor. The balcony was a pane of glass facing the highway, and the cold. I stood up from the bed and felt my knees go wrong. I pulled on my coat and my shoes while texting 911 with shaky thumbs. I was on the phone with a calm woman who kept me repeating the hotel name when someone knocked, quick and polite. The fire alarm on the ceiling tinked once like a spoon against a glass. Ma'am, security. A man's voice through the door. Different from Aiden's timbre, but same flat politeness. Everything okay? Ma'am. A pause. Longer. Softer. Sophia. I opened the door, despite everything screaming at me to not open. I opened the door because he knew my name and said it like we were in a conversation already. The man in the hall wore the hotel jacket and a lanyard and had that same nothing face men wear when they expect to be bumped by a rolling suitcase. He took in the room behind me and then looked past me to the sliding glass balcony door and said, "You want to close that?" The balcony door was open a hand's width. The winter air made a little ribbon of itself on the carpet. He stepped in like he owned the space, and for a second, relief won. He shut the door hard enough to make the glass bounce in its track. He pulled the drapes shut. "Someone's been on the balcony above," he said. There was snow kicked down. It hits the alarm sensors sometimes. He shrugged. "Kids. Sorry you were disturbed." Someone texted me. Could be a prank. He looked at my phone. My fingers clenched around it like a handle. "We can move you to another room." He led me down the hall to a new door and opened it with a clean beep of his master key. He glanced at the bed, the window, the neat hotel painting. He stood there like he was waiting for something, and then he said, "Take care of yourself, Sophia." He left. I sat on the edge of the new bed. shivering in a way that felt like each muscle was getting its own small bad news. I looked back at the text. Unknown, you're sweet when you panic. There is a point past, which you can't be soothed anymore by rational explanations. It took me too long to get there. When I did, I packed my bag again, checked out, and rode in a rideshare with a driver who wanted to tell me about his cousin's restaurant across town while I tried not to cry. I went back to my apartment at 4 a.m. because I wanted everything familiar, even the lousy parts. I wanted the alley's hum. I wanted the elevator's judder. I wanted to know my fear by its first name. The deadbolt tape was torn. The sticky note on my counter said, "Hotel soap makes you itch. New lip balm, though, yes." I walked into my bathroom and looked at my face. There was a red ring around my mouth where I'd been licking, nervous, then smoothing balm over the sore spots. I sat on the closed toilet and shook like I had the flu. When I could stand again, I pulled the smoke detector down. I held it in my lap like a baby while I pried at the seam with a butter knife. The plastic creaked. On the third try, it gave. The back plate came away in my hand. There was a micro SD card taped inside the dome with surgical tape. It wasn't a camera, but its presence was a gunshot in a winter field. It made all the birds rise at once. I set the detector down and stepped backward like it could explode. Then I laughed. I laughed like a lunatic because I understood the trick. If I took the card out and went to anyone, Jerry, Kara, the police, what would I be showing them? A card I found in my own apartment in a place I could have put it. If there was anything recorded on it, the only thing it would prove is that my bedroom existed. I sat on the floor and texted Kara, "Please come over. It's bad." I didn't hit send. I stared at the 3 words, "Please come over," and thought about how many times in my life I'd needed someone and made it sound like nothing. I deleted the text. I mean, he had my number. He had, I don't know, whatever he had. At dawn, I went downstairs to the lobby. Aiden was behind the desk. He looked up with his gentleness and then really looked. He came around the desk with his palms up like you do for a frightened animal. "Hey, you okay?" I put the smoke detector in his hands. He took it with care. He looked at the card, and then he looked at me the way people do when they're trying to put their face far away from their eyes. "Who else has the master keys?" I asked. "Me. Jerry, the property manager. Cleaning contractors for move-outs. The fire inspection team for the week. I'll go check the camera logs." "There aren't cameras in my hall," I said. "Remember, privacy." It came out mean. I didn't mean it for him. "In the lobby," he said. "Stairwells, elevator." He went behind the desk and scrolled. He took down timestamps like he was trying to keep them from evaporating. He said, "If you've been feeling weird at night, there's a guy who keeps letting himself in from the alley exit. That door is supposed to lock. I'll have Jerry fix it." "Who?" "Hoodie. Ball cap. Looks down. After midnight, mostly." He glanced at me. "It could be nothing. Food deliveries." "Food deliveries don't go up in the elevator without calling." "Some do." He hesitated. "Can I ask you a question?" "What?" "Have you dated anyone in the building?" "What? No. Anyone who," he faltered, "had reason to make you want to feel watched." I thought about the embarrassing crowns folder on my phone. I thought about the man at the laundromat, the way he'd looked at me like I was the problem, because I had been. I thought about my brain clutching a shoe notch like a relic. No, I said, I don't stalk people. It sounded weak to my own ears. I didn't say that, Aiden said. What do I do? Move out, he said, too quickly, like he regretted it immediately. Then, because that wasn't helpful, we'll check the stairwells and the roof. I'll walk you to your unit. Change your routines. Don't go home at the same time. Don't leave the balcony door unlatched. I don't. He didn't argue. That night I slept under the opera of my own pulse. At 1:12 a.m., the elevator thrummed through the wall. At 1:14, the motion-sensing bathroom fan clicked on, and I lay there staring at the ceiling, counting the red blink of the smoke detector like the metronome of a slow heart. At 1:17, my phone buzzed. Unknown, you broke my eye. I forgave you. That's love. I turned on every light. I stood in the kitchen, breathing with my palms flat on the counter, until my fingers ached. I didn't text back. I didn't call the police. I put my phone into the refrigerator to shut it up. Not a permanent solution, but enough so I could hear anything else besides it. I took the butter knife and slid it into my sleeve. I opened my front door without letting the latch click, and then I shut it loudly, hard enough to make a show of it. I locked the deadbolt. I slid the chain. I went to the bedroom and shut that door quietly like I was tucking in a child. Then I got into the closet. I know. Why not leave? Because I wanted to see his face. Because I wanted to know if the horror had a shape. I sat in the closet behind winter jackets that smelled like last year's snow, and waited. At 1:39, the elevator hummed. At 1:42, my front door made a sound that was almost nothing. The tiniest accommodation of wood to metal. At 1:43, someone breathed. I've thought about describing it better. About how a stranger's breath in your home is a sound like a stray animal in a church. But breath is breath. It's proof that something else is living in the place where you are living. It was close enough to hear. It was near the bedroom doorway. It came with the smell of spearmint gum and cold air. The tiny red light at the corner of my closet ceiling, the one I had stopped being able to see because it blinked so slowly, went dark, then bright, the smoke detector cycling. There was a snap of fingernails flicking the plastic. A weight settled on the edge of my bed. The crease of the mattress, the tiny sound of fabric protesting, a rustle near the duvet, a hand, I think, feeling the warm shape I'd left there with pillows under the covers like a bad movie. A sound that might have been a chuckle, and might have been a breath caught on a stitch of cloth. I waited until my legs shook uncontrollably. I waited until he got up. I waited until the weight of the bed released, and the air in the room changed. He moved around like someone in a home he had learned by touch. A soft bump of knee to coffee table. The little finger taps on the door frame as he passed. He paused in the hallway. The spearmint smell came closer. He put his face toward the closet, I think. The coats wavered around me and fell back like a sea. He scraped his thumb slowly across the closet door's seam, then he moved away. The deadbolt slid with a sound like metal, softly kissing itself. The door closed with that careful hush I knew so well. The chain was left dangling, a touch less straight than before. I didn't move for 10 minutes. The closet turned into a world, When I opened the door, the apartment looked like a set after a scene. Bed unruffled, kitchen red digital clock telling a lie about time. The sticky note on the counter said, "You're getting braver. That was the first time the police took me seriously. Not because of the note, because of the audio." The old phone I'd shoved between two cookbooks on the shelf had picked up the deadbolt, the chain, the footfalls, the faint scritch of a thumb on wood, the whisper that sounded like, "Good girl," or maybe, "Don't curl," like a sports coach telling someone to keep their form. Tell me which is worse. An officer named Blevins came, looked at the micro SD card, and shrugged. But when he heard the audio and saw the torn deadbolt tape and the chain slack, he stopped shrugging. "He knows the building," he said. "He's, comfortable in here. He wants you to know he's comfortable. He wants you to feel proud when he approves of you. That's a thing." They dusted for prints. They found mine, Kara's, and someone else's partials on the bathroom door, and the inside of the front door near the chain. They sent me to sleep at Kara's place while they secured the scene, which turned out to mean took pictures, added tape of their own, and told the property manager about liability. When I came back the next afternoon with 2 officers, the sticky note was gone. "That's a taunt," Blevins said, looking at the clean counter like it was an insult. "He wanted to show he could be in here when he wanted. He wanted to show us that evidence is optional when you have a key." They asked for footage. The building had a lobby video that showed Jerry propping the alley door open at 12:50 a.m. and bringing in 2 flats of canned paint. It showed Aiden arriving at 10:58 p.m. It showed the fire inspection company bringing ladders and cases during the day. It showed a man in a dark hoodie riding the elevator at 1:39 a.m. with his head down. He didn't look up at the camera. He tapped a key fob, and the light blinked. "Who is that?" Blevins asked. Jerry looked uncomfortable. "Could be a contractor." "At 1:39 in the morning? Sometimes we do off-hours work. Who has that fob?" Jerry scrolled and scrolled. The list of fob assignments was a spreadsheet on a dusty office computer. "Master," he said. "Master, master, master." He widened the columns. "Looks like one of the master fobs wasn't checked back in after the last fire inspection day." Aiden said, very quietly, "It wasn't me. We're not saying that." Blevins said. Aiden folded his arms across his chest and stared through the glass like the alley could give him an answer if he just focused hard enough. "Do you recognize the shoes?" I asked, before my brain could stop me from asking the dumbest question in the room. Jerry said, "Shoes are shoes." Aiden looked at me and then looked at the screen. He drags his right foot a little. "You hear it?" He rewound. The sound was faint, but it was there. The smallest irregular scrape on every other step. That's not a contractor. Contractors wear steel toes and walk like they have a schedule. "Who walks like that?" Blevins asked. "Guys who don't want to be noticed," Aiden said. He hesitated. "Kids who used to shoplift. Guys who've done time." "You sure do have opinions," Jerry said, fake light. "Want to do my job too, buddy?" "I'm doing it," Aiden said. That night, I went to Kara's anyway. The apartment felt like a mouth with a tongue in it that wasn't mine. Kara made pasta and slid me a bowl, and we watched garbage on TV. We laughed at a thing that wasn't funny, We locked her door with both deadbolts and put a chair under the handle like we were 70. And living somewhere, our bones were the only locks that mattered. I slept. I dreamed about shoes scuffing dust the color of ash. At 3:07 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown, isn't it cozy to have a friend you breathe quietly when you share? Kara's bedroom door was closed. I listened. I heard her, even in sleep, the little whistle she's had since we were 19. I typed back before I could talk myself out of it. "What do you want?" He answered, "Unknown. To be let in." I didn't sleep again. We ate pancakes at dawn at a place where the tables are always sticky and the syrup bottle caps are welded with sugar. I took a nap at noon. When I woke up, there was a voicemail from Blevins. They had a name. The man with the hoodie and the master fob was one of the fire inspection contractors, not the one who'd come into my unit. That guy had a signed form with my signature and a timestamp that matched my memory. Another guy, a man named Colin with a record for trespassing and a sealed juvenile file that used to be an open joke in his family. You know how teenagers are. They found him 2 days later because he went back to the building at 1:14 a.m. like Tara had a calendar. Aiden saw him on the camera and didn't wait. He went up the stairs to the 6th floor instead of taking the elevator because you can hear a person coming on stairs. He met Colin at the top landing and didn't do something heroic. He just said, "Hey, man," in a voice that made my throat close when I heard it on the audio later. He talked like talking was a rope he could throw. "What?" Colin asked, like he'd been woken from a nap. "Walk with me," Aiden said. "Let's get some air." They walked down together because Aiden knows the building's bone-familiar sounds. The difference between elevator hum and the click a decade-old fire door makes when it hasn't been oiled enough. The rackety laughter from the unit with the 3 guys who live like season 2 of a TV show where nobody learns lessons. The hiss of the boiler, the thin, sharp cry of the new baby in 2B. They walked through the lobby under the chalkboard that said "Welcome Home" in cursive. They walked out into the alley where the dumpsters wear graffiti like tattoos. Then they turned left instead of right, which is important, because left is where the alley widens into a crook of shadow behind the cafe, and the security camera above the door has a blind spot there. Aiden said, "Give me the fob." Colin said, "You're not a cop." Aiden said, "No, I'm a witness." There's a kind of silence in police audio that isn't really silence. It has a shape. It makes its own weather. Then there was the sound of a scuffle, a squeal of rubber on grit, a curse. Then Aiden huffed, "Don't." And someone else said soft, "Okay," like he didn't mean it. When Blevins walked me through it later, he kept his voice flat, like telling me a recipe. I think he was being kind. Aiden is okay. He has a line of purple on his forearm and a new dent in his watch. Colin had a flashlight in his pocket that wasn't just a flashlight. It had a camera lens embedded where the bulb should be. The police found a small hard case in the trunk of his car with 8 micro SD cards, neatly labeled with dates and unit numbers, and a folded paper napkin that smelled like coffee and the alley. Some of the footage was mine. He'd breathed in my hallway. He'd sat on my bed and watched the red light blink and blink and blink. He'd filmed himself writing notes on my counter with my pen, his hand careful and neat, and each O like a mouth open halfway in surprise. He had other footage, too. The old woman on 3A who takes naps in the afternoon with the TV volume high. The couple on 7D who fight and then have quiet, exhausted sex. A rhythm like rowing. The kid in 5C who leaves his coins lined up on his desk and cries when they fall. He had captured the everyday exhale of the building. He had captured me in the shower with the mirror fogged, but not fogged enough. And I watched 10 seconds of that before I leaned forward and threw up in a police station trash can, which is as undignified as it sounds. They arrested him. There will be charges. There will be a trial, I'm told. There will be words like pattern, prior, intent, and escalation. There will be a paper that says order of protection and no contact, and a date. There will be a morning I wake up and a door will click again, and I will not know if the sound is my memory or a new breath. That's not drama. That's statistics. A man like that does not start and stop in neat lines because a pair of handcuffs drew a box around him. He slows, maybe. He redirects. He learns to look up at cameras. People have been very kind since it made the rounds in the building. They bring me muffins. They say, I never would have guessed. He looked normal. And I say, everybody looks normal under fluorescent lights. Kara cried and apologized, like she'd been the one who taught him how to tape a card inside. A detector. Aiden bought me a red sweater and left it at the desk with a sticky note that said, you can pull it off. I laughed so hard I startled a man waiting for a courier. I laughed because the O's on his note were round and empty, just O's, and because the sweater is a color I would never choose. The building replaced every lock. They moved me to a unit on the other side of the floor so my windows look over the street, not the alley. I keep my curtains open at night and watch the lights slide across the ceiling as cars pass. It feels like the city is washing over me on a loop. It feels like breathing alongside something big. Here is the part of the story I don't know what to do with. Even after the arrest, even after the evidence, there's a part of me that thinks about the men I followed 4 blocks, and the way their shoulders set when they felt me behind them. There's a part of me that remembers how that felt, the heat of being the eye instead of the animal, and is ashamed. There's a part of me that can't stop wondering what attention looks like to someone like him when the thing you want most is a door opening softly. You can live in the world again, Blevins told me when he dropped me off. People don't have to be the shape of your fear. I'm trying. I put plants on my window ledge and bite the dead leaves off with my fingers and feel proud. I cook ridiculous, messy things and leave oil splats on the stove and don't wipe them off right away. I let my shoes get scuffed. I bought green onions and ate them raw over eggs. I close the door and let it click however it wants. Sometimes I wake up at 1:43 a.m. and go stand in the hallway and listen to the building breathe. Sometimes the bathroom fan clicks on by itself, and I laugh. Sometimes I put a sticky note on my own counter that says something kind. You did enough today. You are not an animal in a church. And sometimes my phone buzzes at a time when it shouldn't, and I throw it into the refrigerator out of habit. Old tricks for new days. I always take it out. I always check. There are no more texts, just notifications from my banking account or an email from a website I keep meaning to unsubscribe from. There is a crumpled napkin inside my front door, though, wedged so it fell when I opened it yesterday after work. The napkin is blank. It smells like coffee, and alley air. Not impossible. There's a cafe downstairs, but specific. I stared at it for a long time, with my coat still on, and keys in my hand. Then I folded it in half, and in half again, and in half again, until it was a compact, damp square that will not come unfolded without force. I slid it under the toonie on the shelf. I didn't take a picture. I didn't add it to a list. I just let it be the size it is. Because here is the very last thing I learned. A person can be both wrong and right at the same time, for a very long time. I was wrong to make the city smaller by carving it into threads with my eyes. I was right to listen to the parts of the night that were not my own. If you're listening to this because you think you might be losing it, I don't know what to tell you. I'm no expert. This isn't some movie. I'm just me. I can only tell you what I did. I paid attention until the day the attention pointed to something other than me. I made a record. I told the truth, even when it made me look bad. I learned the sound my door makes when it is closed carefully from the inside by someone who is not me. It is a small sound, but it is everything. Story number 6. There's this thing that happens when you drive through Central California, the really rural part. Groves of almond trees are planted in a lot of fields between corn, rice, and other crops. As you drive next to the grove, you can see all the way down rows of trees to the other end of the field for a split second. It depends on how fast you drive, but it sort of feels like watching an old film reel frame by frame. I say this because I've moved here a year ago with my parents and sister before my freshman year of high school. I found the rows almost hypnotic at first, gazing down them to see what changed. About 3 months ago, I was riding in the car with my dad, and we drove past this random field of trees. Like usual, I adjusted my gaze so I could see down the row. The first row, I saw a dark figure I assumed to be a man, maybe a farmer or a field worker. The next row flicked by, and I could have sworn it was the same silhouette. Each row had a similar silhouette. I was confused, but chalked it up that there must have been some farmers checking trees. Then the field ended, and the cornfield next. To it didn't show anything like that. We got to the next grove, and I recoiled in surprise as I watched 20 rows go by with similar silhouettes at the end of them. Then another field of silhouettes, then another. Dad, are they doing something in the almond groves today? He glanced over at the passing trees. No, I don't know anything specific. Why? I keep seeing people down the rows. Probably just checking irrigation lines. I don't see anyone. We passed another field. More dark figures. A week passed, and every almond grove we drove by had silhouettes down the row. They were getting just a little bit closer to the car as I rode to and from school with my friend, Jackson. He was 2 years older than me, but we were in the same grade since he got held back a couple of years growing up. We both liked heavy metal. Jackson and I had been two of the kids who hadn't hit their growth spurts as we entered high school, and as a new kid, I didn't do a very good job of making friends. However, we both hit our growth spurts 2 months into our freshman year. By the end of the school year, he gained about 20 pounds and grew 6 inches, and I grew into a lanky 6'2" freak. One evening when Jackson couldn't take me home from work, my dad brought me home. How's Jackson doing? You haven't mentioned much about him lately. He's doing good. How'd school finish out for him? I don't know, good, I think. We don't really talk about grades that much. What do you talk about? I don't know, movies, music, cars, not grades. I looked over into a grove as we drove past. The figure was there, silhouetted by the sun. Then it was closer. Each subsequent row, it teleported closer to the road. My stomach dropped, and my pulse thundered. Dark clothing, a medium-built man. It was so close now. I struggled for breath and braced for the figure to jump through the car window as we passed the next row. The field ended. I released a tense breath as the figure disappeared. "What's wrong?" said my dad. I gathered my thoughts. Nothing. I dozed off. I kept my eyes on the road for most of the week. Sometimes I'd see the figure out of my periphery and then just stare at the floor. It felt like I was a toddler playing hide and seek by covering his eyes. After that second week of seeing it, and nothing happening, my fear morphed into curiosity. I found myself excitedly looking out the window on the drive to and from school with Jackson. He caught me looking at it. "What are you looking at?" He wiped his face with his black t-shirt. It was already hot for the morning. "There's this thing in the trees, down the rows. It looks like a person. I've been seeing it for 2 weeks now." "Yeah, I have too." "You have?" "Yeah, I tried to drive around and figure out who it was, but it's kinda hard when you're trying not to crash." "Who? How do you know it's a person and not a ghost or some trick of the light?" "I never said it wasn't a ghost, but you can only see it in almond groves for some reason. Not peaches or walnuts." "How long have you been seeing it for?" "A couple of weeks." "You know anybody else who's seen it?" "No. Just me and you, I guess." We pulled into the school parking lot, even though school was out, in an effort to get to know more people while staying as far away from high school drama as possible. I had decided to sign up for the cross-country team. Our school was pretty terrible and could barely string together the 7 guys and 7 girls needed for a varsity squad of each. I figured I could be a slow 7th, but didn't realize that training started with a running club in the summer heat before practices started in the fall. Still, running club was a good excuse to get out of the house 2 mornings a week before I went to work or hung out with Jackson. My parents didn't approve of shuttling me around at 6 in the morning, so thankfully Jackson covered for me. He kept talking about wanting to lift weights, so he took this as an opportunity to use the school gym while I ran. This gave us a lot of time to speculate on the way to and from practice. "I bet it's an alien." He shook his nasty-smelling protein shake before taking a swig. "How would you prove that?" "It can teleport or make copies of itself." "No, it's gotta be a ghost. Those seem like ghost things, and no one else can see it." "You don't know that. Nobody else is talking about it." He burped. "Yeah, whatever. We got scientific about studying the entity in a way only 2 teenage boys could. We'd accelerate and decelerate to make the frame rate speed up and slow down to see if we could get a better look. We tried a whole bunch of routes. The trees had to be big enough. If the trees were shorter than 6 foot, it wouldn't show up. It only appeared when traveling between speeds of 32 and 93 miles per hour. Though we didn't learn much, it was a fun experiment. Pretty soon the silhouette felt like a fun game we messed with. Something like that made you look thin guys in middle school could use as an excuse to punch each other. After the next practice, we stopped at a fruit stand on the way home from practice and talked to this Hispanic guy selling mangoes. He hadn't seen anything weird in the trees. He was a cool dude, though, and those mangoes were good. Maybe it's a cult, I said on a whim, mango juice gushing down my chin. How would that work? I don't know, they make sacrifices, get powers. They're specifically targeting us. MK Ultra, dude, Jackson said, dripping juice on the already sticky leather seats. Please not MK Ultra. What if these mangoes have LSD in them or something? That's dumb. This could have been a military testing facility where chemicals leaked into the ground and made everyone hallucinate. I'm not going to dignify that with a response. We chewed as the 8-algae sun beat across the windshield and made us squint. You're right about one thing, I added. These mangoes are like crack. Yeah, we gotta get more. I'd blow my whole paycheck on them. I'd steal your paycheck to buy them. I'm the one who paid for them in the first place. Yeah, your mom always said you were a sucker. I punched him hard in the arm, and he spit onto the steering wheel. Cross-country treated me okay. I lost a couple pounds in the first few weeks, even if my diet was still crap. Most of the guys were dorks or geeks. They kept asking if I had seen obscure YouTube videos from 2011 or Doctor Who. I was surprised that I was able to keep up with them, given their gangly physiques looked built for long-distance running. It was only once I met some of the girls I stopped thinking of cross-country as social suicide, particularly one of the juniors, Sophia. Sophia, forgive my hyperbole, was perfect. You might disagree with that, but blonde girls in ponytails and running shorts are exactly my type. But it wasn't just that she was my type. She was so nice. Our first conversation was the first time I had talked to a girl and hadn't seen her pull up her nose in disgust. I like your shoes, she said, as we stood next to each other in preparation to start our run. Thanks, I flatly replied. Where'd you get them? Shoe store. Which one? I don't remember. She ignored my stupidity. I like the colors. Sky blue and tan look good together. Really? I thought they were kind of bland. I just grabbed the first pair that wasn't a neon eyesore. No, I think they're cute. Cute? I scrambled for an answer. Is that a good thing? Grinned and tilted her head to the side. Cute is great. You've got good taste. How could anyone be this happy at 6 a.m.? Well, if you like them, I said, uncertainly, my face feeling red. Like I said, they're great. With that, Coach told us to start. She started her watch and ran away with my breath. As I climbed into Jackson's car after practice, he noticed me looking at her. So you joined the team for the babes? You sly dog. He razzed me. Which one you got your eye on? I was turning a deep shade of red. You know Sophia? What? Dang it, dude. I was way into her. He protested. Oh, sorry, man. Ha! You should have seen your face. He grinned. No, dude. I'm not into her. Now the Latina chick's at the gym. Man, you should see the curves. Not like these skinny girls. Whatever. Dude. I'm hungry. I disliked how he often talked about girls that way. We peeled out of the parking lot and started the drive back to my house, taking a route we hadn't gone before to go get some breakfast. As groves passed by on both sides, I thought of a new test. Hey, if we look out opposite sides of the car, would there be two figures? Good one. Let's see how many of those cultists there are. You said that was a stupid idea. What the heck? I can't change my mind on it. He invited me to verbally spar. Just look out the window. We looked out of opposite sides of the car. There was a silhouette on my side. You see it? I asked. Yeah, it's a hot Latina girl now. He was getting on my nerves. Shut up. Fine. It's still there. You? Yeah. Same as always. Guess that means we're both cursed. We sighed. My mind felt fuzzy as I stared at the silhouette in another passing grove. It was like I was trying to look at something too far away between too many layers of glass. I went out and bought a watch the next week for cross-country practice after my coach told me to. I had saved up enough for one of the fancy smart ones, even though I didn't have a lot of uses for it. It came with a few swappable bands, but I didn't care, so I stuck with the sky blue one that came attached. Sophia looked pleasantly surprised when she saw it. You got a watch to match your shoes. I shrugged as I glanced at both. Didn't plan it. She giggled. Her nose scrunched when she did that. You must have some divine guidance, then. Just lucky, I guess. Do you like it? Dunno, this is the first time I'm wearing it. She smiled. I'm sure you'll be faster now. I felt like it when I got mine. She held up hers, the same model with a lighter blue strap. Whoa, look at that, twinning. I held mine up next to hers. Her hands were tiny compared to mine. Maybe it is divine guidance. She smiled. Coach told us to start, and I felt like I was floating instead of running when I thought about her. She continued to steal my thoughts while riding home with Jackson. He broke the silence. It's getting closer. My head whipped out of a daydream to look out the window. The silhouette was probably 20 yards from the road now. You see it? Jackson asked. Yeah, that's a lot closer. I think I can see some details, dude. For some reason, it looks like a Hispanic guy. There was no way he was serious. What do you mean? No, I'm serious. You're not pulling my leg? No, why would I be pulling your leg? I couldn't see my side well with the sun rising behind it, but I didn't think it looked like a Hispanic guy. Even though the face and hands were shadowed, the skin didn't look dark enough. Looks like a white guy to me. What? Clearly, his skin is somewhat darker than ours. No, I'm telling you, it looks like a white guy. Okay, whatever. You're looking at the sun anyway. It was a long weekend afterwards that Jackson and I didn't hang out because of work. I spent a lot of time daydreaming about Sophia. Hey, you doing anything for the 4th of July? Jackson asked on the drive to the next practice. I don't know. Probably watch some fireworks. My parents are chaperoning a Girl Scouts trip out of town for my sister. Want to watch a movie? My parents are gonna be gone. Let me see. I'll check and get back to you. As I was getting done with my run, hands on my knees and breathing heavily, Sophia walked over to me. Hey, we're having a pool party at Ella's house on the 4th, and the whole cross-country team is invited. You want to come? Admiring the sparkle in her eyes, I replied without thinking. Yeah, sure. Do I, bring a swimsuit? She tilted her head to the side and laughed. It's a pool party, of course. Oh, yeah, okay. I huffed. My brain, need some food to start working again? Well, we'll have pizza and snacks there, so come hungry. She giggled and scrunched her nose. See you there. She turned and jogged away. My gaze lingered on her. Back in the car with Jackson, the AC was struggling to keep up, and I was gulping down all the water I had. "Hey, so about the 4th. "Yeah," he said, mouth breathing. His black tank was already sweaty from his workout. "I got invited to a pool party by Sophia." "Cool. That's okay." His tone was downtrodden. "Yeah, man, go hang with girls. We can hang out after." "That's true. I don't think it's gonna go super late." "Thanks, man." I had to justify to myself that he was okay with it. I changed the subject as we passed a grove. "So how'd you figure out it's a Hispanic dude that's haunting us?" "I don't know. Dark hair, tanner skin. He got really close to the car one time last week." "Like how close?" "Probably 10 yards from the road. I could see his face a little." "What did it look like?" "I don't know, kinda sad. Had a beard or a mustache, but mostly just shadowy. Looking at the car go by." "Where'd you see this?" "Over on Turlock Road. Can we drive over there quickly?" "Yeah, whatever. Can you at least grab me a protein bar out of the glove box?" We drove there. The grove he was talking about had shallow rows, but a lot of them. Our silhouetted friend was jumping towards me with every row as Jackson hit the sweet spot of 32. The sun was coming up from behind the mountains and backlighting the figure. I squinted into the sunlight as it got closer and closer. Black clothes, dark silhouette, dark hair, but the skin seemed lighter. It was so close to the car. The sunlight washed out the face, so familiar for some reason. The field ended. "Don't know, dude. Didn't look Hispanic to me." "Whatever, dude. Just keep saying it's aliens." "Hey, we still haven't ruled out a demon. Maybe we gotta recite a prayer and it will go away." He let out a sigh. "Can I just go home? I'm tired and hungry." I expected him to jump at the chance for more investigation, but obliged. His request, the 4th of July, couldn't come soon enough. My parents dropped me off at a mansion with the intent that Jackson would pick me up. Ella's house was way too nice, with a huge pool in the back, complete with a covered porch, minibar with a fridge, diving board, waterfall, and jacuzzi. Probably 30 people mingled around the pool, including the whole cross-country team. I grabbed some pizza and engaged in nerd talk with the other cross-country guys before I got tapped on the shoulder. Sophia stood there, glowing in the sunlight, a sky-blue bathing suit against her tan skin. She was right. Sky blue and tan went well together. "You made it," she said, giving me a side hug. I turned red, and not from sunburn. She smelled like sunscreen and flowers. "Yeah, I did. And I, wore my swim trunks. The new shorts were kind of itchy. I like them, and they match your watch," she said. "Huh, guess I got lucky again," I said, fist pumping in my mind that she had noticed. "Are you gonna swim?" she said, tilting her head to the side. "Don't I have to wait 30 minutes after eating?" "That's a myth," she giggled. "Besides, I'm sure someone would save you if you were drowning." We swam for a while as people jumped off the diving board, guys roughhoused, and girls lounged and chatted. I met a bunch of Sophia's friends, who seemed nice. As the sun got lower, people migrated to the jacuzzi or the bar, but Sophia and I sat on the edge of the deep end. "So why'd you join the cross-country team?" she asked, the pool light giving her a flattering glow. "I don't know," I said. Didn't want to get hurt while still playing a sport. Seemed like a good way to meet people. You could trip and fall and break your head open, she said. I don't think I'm that uncoordinated. I managed to walk around without falling over most days. She giggled and kicked her feet in the water. I'm glad you joined the team. Thanks, I said. Thanks for making me feel welcome. She smiled. Her eyes sparkled in the dimming light. Hey, I said, can I ask you a question? Her eyes got big. Yeah, sure. Like, a weird question. Yeah. I mean, it's really weird. Well, you're being really weird right now, she teased. Okay, whatever. I leaned in toward her. She leaned in towards me. Her skin looked so smooth. Have you ever seen anything strange in the trees around here? Her face got puzzled. What do you mean? Like strange stuff while driving around almond groves. No. What do you mean? I explained to her what Jackson and I had been seeing and how it kept changing. She had never seen anything like it. Yeah, Jackson and I can't figure out what it is. Does that scare you? She said. I don't know, it's just kinda normal now. You said you were seeing different things. Jackson said it was a Hispanic guy, but it looks like a white guy to me. Bulky figure, wearing black. Kind of hard to see with shadows. You sure you aren't seeing two different things? I guess we just assumed it was the same. She looked hesitant. Well, I mean, it kind of sounds like you were describing Jackson. Really? Yeah. Dark clothes, bulky. You sure you're okay? She put her hand on my forearm. Our eyes met. I leaned toward her. She smelled like the pool and sunshine. Tires screeched into the driveway, and someone laid on the horn over loud music. Sophia whipped her head around at the noise. Then the yelling started. Hey, Anthony. Hey, let's go. I didn't catch the rest of Jackson's yelling over the rev of the engine. All the eyes at the party shot toward me. I scrambled up from the edge of the pool, embarrassed, and quickly turned to Sophia. I'll, see you at practice next week. She looked beautiful and uncertain as I turned my back on her, grabbed my stuff, and toweled off as I jogged around the house. Anthony, come on. He honked again. Dude, what the hell? Dude, let's go for a drive, then watch some fireworks. Okay, come on, man. We gotta go. He seemed so convinced. His eyes looked weird, and he was bouncing his leg. I got in the car, fastened my seatbelt, and he peeled out of the driveway. Where are we going, Jackson? We pulled onto a minor highway at a speed I wasn't comfortable with. Just around, dude. I just want to drive. His pace picked up, even faster. I gripped the console and the handle above the door as we barreled past side roads. Most were empty. Hey, can you slow down? I said. How'd it go with Sophia? I was caught off guard. It was good. She likes me, I think. Huh. I barely heard the grunt over the metal music. I turned it down. I was thinking about asking her out before you showed up. Yeah, dude, she's hot. He didn't look at me. Fields whisked by. Where are we going? He turned onto a side road that narrowed between two groves of almond trees. I just wanted to go for a drive with you. Okay, but where are we going? He laughed. I don't know. Shouldn't we figure that out? I don't want to get lost. I'm sure we'll find our way back. He wasn't making any sense. Why are we driving? Just to drive. But why? Is something going on? I left off with you. No, man. I just want to drive." I gave an exasperated sigh as I turned to the window. The sun was an orange ball, just touching the horizon. It pierced through the trees and shone perfectly down the rows, casting long shadows in the trees. The silhouette was gone. I turned back to Jackson just in time to see a pickup truck run the stop sign at the intersection. About 100 feet in front of us, we must have hit the truck 20 miles over the speed limit. I became weightless as the car flipped over its nose and over the truck. My head slammed into the support column as we rolled, and my neck whipped against the headrest. Glass sprayed across the cabin, cutting my cheeks and arms. My feet came unglued from the floor on the second roll. My ankle bent the wrong way as it caught on the bottom of the glove box. I heard a crunch as the dashboard buried the other leg. My vision swam as the car slammed into a tree and almost folded in half, whipping me against the dashboard, now crushing my midsection. As my vision reoriented, the car came to a stop on its side, my door now pinned on the ground. From where we had landed, I could see directly down the row of almond trees as the sun's last light sank below the horizon. Something dripped on my cheek. I looked up to Jackson's still face, mouth and eyes wide open. Blood was dripping from his mangled arm onto me, a slow pat, pat, pat. Pain overwhelmed me as the sun's glow faded from the sky. I melted away into darkness. Jackson had been killed on impact. His neck snapped as the car flipped over its nose. I woke up a week later with 2 broken legs, a torn meniscus, cracked ribs, a broken arm, whiplash, and a major concussion. Safe to say I'm going to miss the cross-country season. The guy in the truck died after he was thrown from the vehicle into a nearby tree. He was a farmhand here on a work visa from Mexico. It's been 2 months since the accident. I've spent most of that time laying in a dark room, hoping one of these days my head stops hurting. Sorry if this account seems a little disjointed. Sometimes I only have enough focus to write a few words at a time. I haven't seen or spoken to Sophia since the 4th of July. The colors of that night bleed together every time I try to think about it. Jackson's hollow eyes are etched into my mind. I just keep wondering what I should have done. On a drive to the hospital for a checkup, I noticed they've started planting an extra row of trees along the road in the groves. It maximizes land usage, I think, but it also breaks up that picture effect of passing tree rows. Hopefully it keeps anyone else from seeing a silhouette in the trees, or at least they don't have to see it coming. Please don't share or reproduce this without my permission. Story number 7. I am dictating this from the bathroom floor. The tile is cold under my palms. The house is quiet except for the hum of the air conditioner and my son's sleep-muffled cough down the hall. They say a father is the shepherd of his home. I believed that, even after I drifted from the church. I told myself ritual wasn't necessary to stay close to truth. My wife trusted me, my kids trusted me, and I thought that was enough. It began with the mirror. At first, my reflection lagged a fraction of a second. Then one night, I watched it blink when my eyes were open. A deliberate, slow blink. Later it smiled when I wasn't smiling. I kept it secret. If it was madness, Speaking it would make it real. If it was spiritual, acknowledging it would invite it deeper. So I watched in silence. Then the whispering began. At first, static, then words, then my own voice calling my name in the same firm tone I use when my kids are about to step into danger. Soon, the shadows moved outside the mirror. Black shapes slithered along the walls. My wife saw nothing. My kids laughed. But I was terrified. One night, the whisper grew clear. You walked away. You left the shield down. Now I am in your house. Later, my son stood by my bed, pale and trembling. Daddy, the man in the dark says you can't protect us anymore. What man? I whispered. The one who stands behind you in the mirror. He says you let him in. He's wrong, I told him in an attempt to convince us both. The next day I went to a priest. He gave me holy water, a St. Benedict medal, and told me to bless the mirrors, claim my home, and pray aloud, to not trust the thing on the other side. That night I pressed wet fingers to the bathroom mirror. Frost raced across the glass. My reflection's mouth opened wider than a mouth should, releasing a guttural growl. A freezing wind poured from the glass, carrying the stench of decay. You think water can save you? It rumbled. You abandon the light. The shadows claim you now. The mirror rippled like water. Behind me, I saw my children's reflections in the doorway. Blank faces, moving lips. Daddy, let him in. He'll protect us now. I pushed harder with the sign of the cross. The image cracked. Not the glass, but the reflection itself. Silence fell. But when I looked again, my reflection smiled. Small, private. It lifted its hand. I didn't. That night I woke to the mattress dipping, as if someone had sat at the foot of the bed. The smell of sulfur thickened the air. A voice in my head, calm and cold. You set down the staff. I picked it up. The flock is safer with me. The next morning, letters rose across my chest in mirror writing welts. Mine. Now every mirror is covered, but towels never stay in place. At 3:12, the glass breathes. My reflection crouches like an animal, blinking 3 times. It's our family's private sign for I love you. I hear my daughter's door hinge creak, though I'm still on the floor. I smell hot pennies. My reflection is standing. I am not. You pray. Pray now. If you don't, do whatever you do when someone is about to fall from a cliff. Because I'm about to stand. And I don't know if it'll be me who rises. You survived. For now. But the shadows aren't done with you yet. If this story gave you chills, like the video, share it with someone who dares to watch and comment your thoughts, especially if you're watching in the dark. Subscribe to Spectral Shadows, where fear never sleeps, and the next nightmare is always waiting. We'll be watching.